Thomas Porteous, and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Russia says Ukraine has postponed a major prisoner swap and return of fallen soldiers agreed during peace talks, calling for Kyiv to honour the timeline. Moscow claims it delivered 1,212 bodies and a list of 640 prisoners of war, urging Ukraine to start the largest exchange of the war immediately. Israel says its forces have recovered the body of a Thai hostage from Rafah months after he was taken by Hamas in the October 7th attack. Defense Minister Israel Katz confirms he was held by the Mujahideen brigades after being abducted from the Gaza Strip. Russia unleashes nearly 50 drones on Kharkiv, killing 3 and injuring 21, including a month-old baby in one of the war's most intense attacks. 2 more die in Kherson as strikes continue across Ukraine following Moscow's claimed response to a Ukrainian drone offensive. U.S. President Donald Trump says he has no plans to speak with Elon Musk, adding he's not thinking about him amid their feud over a tax cut bill. Trump wishes Musk well, but warns his federal contracts could face review, saying, "We'll take a look at everything. It's a lot of money." President Trump says top US officials will meet Chinese representatives in London on June the 9th to resolve the ongoing trade clash. The announcement comes after Trump spoke with President Xi Jinping, seeking to end tensions over his Liberation Day tariffs. Thailand beefs up troops along a disputed border after Cambodia rejects de-escalation proposals. And it says the defense minister. The army claims full control of border checkpoints as regional powers like ASEAN and China struggle to cool ongoing tensions. Kilmar Albrado Garcia, mistakenly deported under Trump, is now back in the United States facing smuggling charges that could mean life in prison. His lawyer slams the case as fantastical, while critics say it exposes the Trump administration's disregard for civil liberty. The State Department is considering sending $500 million in US aid funds to a new Gaza aid group, despite fears of violence around its operations. Sources say the move would deepen US involvement in the controversial Gaza Humanitarian Foundation as aid efforts struggle with chaos. Now, our top story this hour. The US is considering providing $500 million to the controversial Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Sources say the move would deepen American involvement in aid efforts facing violence and chaos. The foundation has been criticized for lack of neutrality, with crowds overwhelming distribution hubs and senior staff resigning. Over 80 Palestinians have been reported shot near sites since June the 1st. Meanwhile, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency urges Israel to provide evidence to support allegations made against it. The UNRWA says it has repeatedly requested cooperation for 20 months without response and denies any wrongdoing. The UNRWA has also raised alarm over severe hygiene shortages for women in Gaza due to the ongoing siege. Many women and girls lack access to clean water and sanitary supplies, forcing them to reuse torn fabrics, impacting their dignity and mental health. Gaza's health ministry warns that hospitals could shut down within days as Israeli forces block fuel access. Generators powering critical care units may fail, threatening thousands of patients. Now in northern Gaza, an Israeli attack west of Jabalia camp has killed 3 Palestinians, according to Al-Ally hospital sources. This comes amid rising tensions and ongoing violence in the region. The United Nations calls for aid delivery to follow strict humanitarian principles to protect civilian lives. This comes as Palestinians gathered to mark Eid al-Adha amid the rubble of a destroyed mosque in Khan Yunis. Despite ongoing airstrikes and displacement, worshippers came together to pray, vowing to honour their faith and the holiday even in the midst of devastation and loss. We're now joined by Raymond Vickery, who's a former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce, and he's located in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Raymond, for joining us on the programme. Raymond, I want to start with the US-backed the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and the news that the US is contemplating a significant $500 million contribution to the aid group. Can I get your thoughts on the visuals that we've had of the organisation so far, how this aid distribution has transpired, and the news that now the US is looking to a $500 million investment in the company?
Well, thanks very much for having me. You're quite right to zero in on this story about aid. You know, great democracies like the U.S. and India and Europe, Japan need to work together to try to build peace and prosperity in the Middle East and throughout the world. Unfortunately, what's going on here is an attempt by the Trump administration to weaken, if not destroy, international organizations like the United Nations. They previously have weakened NATO. They've attacked G20. And it comes from a mindset and really an ideology that somehow a nation's greatness can be measured by its ability to act without restraint and to do as it pleases in the world. This latest attempt is a part of that plan. It is working on a really unilateral basis with Israel in order to try to ameliorate what is obviously a very dire situation in regard to famine in Gaza. And it tries to score political points by saying, yes, we are doing something about the famine, while at the same time trying to move forward with a view of might makes right in regard to retaliation for the horrendous attacks on Israel back in 2023. It is absolutely outside the pale. It will not work, and it should not work, because what's being done is to try to militarize the provision of food aid to desperately starving people in Gaza. It's not a question of Israel being able to defend itself. It's a question of the means and whether they actually promote peace, prosperity, and human rights. And this approach does exactly the opposite.
Yes, and Raymond, how do you assess the implications of the US potentially becoming the largest donor to an aid foundation that's being criticized for its lack in neutrality?
Well, it's a ridiculous approach. What is happening is trying to square the circle, if you will, for political and public relations in the United States, so that when people see these horrendous images on their televisions or through the computer feeds, that the Trump administration is able to say, well, we're doing something about this. We're trying to get aid to these desperate people. But what's really going on is an attempt to destroy UNRWA, to act outside the United Nations, and only do what it is that Prime Minister Netanyahu and his cohort in Israel want to do, which is basically to accomplish an ethnic cleansing by trading food for compliance to go into camps to be able to control the populace. The United States should not have any part of this approach, and they should, the United States, in my view, should work cooperatively, not only with the United Nations, but with Arab countries and Israel to bring about something which truly promotes peace and prosperity in the region rather than makes it worse.
Raymond, we've seen Elon Musk during the span of Trump's second tenure as president cut U.S. aid in a huge way. However, there's an investment in this, a possible investment. How might this affect the U.S.'s reputation and effectiveness in global humanitarian efforts?
Well, I think it has a very harmful effect. Obviously, Elon Musk and the whole DOGE effort operated outside the law in the United States. We're supposed to preserve, protect, and defend. That's the oath that the president takes. And in regard to USAID, a congressionally chartered and established organization, just went in and unilaterally destroyed the organization. And of course, this has effects across the board to the United States soft power, as Professor Nye used to say. This is not going to help in terms of putting $500 million into the Israeli-sponsored militarization of aid. And it just adds to the isolation of the United States. Unfortunately, that's okay with President Trump. What he wants to do is to recreate a sort of late 19th century Fortress America in which he gets to control Greenland, Canada, and other places over here, and leaves it to other powers to control their neighborhood. This is contrary to what the United States has stood for since World War II. We helped establish the United Nations, helped to establish the international aid programs, and now he's walking away from it. But it's a part of the ideological set of the MAGA supporters of President Trump.
Raymond Vickery, thank you very much. You are staying with us. We now move on, staying in the Indo-Pacific, where tensions are escalating along the Thai-Cambodian border after a Cambodian soldier was killed in a brief skirmish last month. Thailand's defence minister confirmed that both countries have now reinforced troops in disputed areas. He claimed Cambodia rejected recent de-escalation proposals, prompting Thailand to bolster its military posture. The border row stems from a century-old dispute rooted in colonial-era maps drawn by France. Historical sites like the Preah Vihear temple have repeatedly sparked nationalist tensions, triggering deadly clashes in the past. While both governments have maintained friendly diplomatic ties, rising nationalist pressure in Thailand has inflamed the situation. The Cambodian Prime Minister says his country will defend its territory, while Thailand's military asserts it is ready for high-level operations. We're now joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao, who is a fellow at the Hudson Institute located in Tokyo, Japan. Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, for joining us. Tensions obviously have recently escalated between these two Southeast Asian nations. How does this situation reflect the broader regional security concerns in the Southeast Asia region?
In Southeast Asia, the situation is relatively calm, but sometimes they fight each other. This time they fought, but time is only 10 minutes. So that's why, despite there is the soldier in the Cambodian side, it is not easy to escalate the full-scale war between two countries. But at the same time, when we check the political regime of the two countries' regime face a little bit strong pressure from the domestic audiences. Because in Cambodia, the new government sworn in after the current government's father lead the government, and Cambodia is not the democratic. So his popularity lies on the just popularity of his leadership. So that's why he cannot show the weak stance. And in case of Thailand, for a long time, Thailand faced one kind of the power vacuum situation. So that's why she need to show, the Prime Minister Petotan need to show the relatively strong stance against foreign threat. But at the same time, both sides do not wish to escalate that situation. So that's why I believe it will not escalate so drastically, I think.
Yes, and Dr. Nagar, how important is nationalism from both countries? We know that diplomatically on the highest levels, these two countries have had a long history, but they are peaceful. And is there any chance that this escalates into something wider at all in between the two nations of Cambodia and Thailand?
Of course, there is a risk to escalate, but the possibility is not high. Because when the cause of this problem was origin of this problem at the colonial age, France write the map, and France got some territory from Thailand, and so that's why when the Cambodia was independent, this border was written originally from the France written border. So that's why view from the Thailand, part of their territory is the Cambodian side. This is not logical for the Thailand. But in the international court, even if Thailand want to claim that territory, the Thailand decide to follow this verdict of the international court. So that's why Thailand side do not wish to escalate, and the Cambodia side also do not wish to escalate. So that's why even if they try to reply the domestic audience, which claims a strong stance against others, view from the traditional way, there's a high possibility that two countries will follow the decision of the international rule and not wish to escalate the situation to the full-scale war, I think. And in the Southeast Asia, indeed, they face many problems now, even if they are developing very fast. So that's why they try to be as one ASEAN instead of the separated ASEAN. So even if the small problems they are facing, they try to exaggerate the situation, I believe.
Dr. Saturna Gao, thank you for joining us and for your insight. We now move back over to the United States, where Salvadorian migrant Kilmar Albredo Garcia, who was wrongfully deported from the United States 3 months ago, has been brought back to the US and placed in federal custody. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi said that a grand jury in Tennessee had issued a sealed indictment against Albredo Garcia last month, charging him with human smuggling and conspiracy. If convicted, he would be deported to El Salvador after completing his sentence. Here's what the Attorney General had to say.
Albredo Garcia has landed in the United States to face justice. On May 21st, a grand jury in the Middle District of Tennessee returned a sealed indictment charging Albredo Garcia with alien smuggling and conspiracy to commit alien smuggling.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem claimed the case was supported by what she described as overwhelming evidence. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also thanked the Salvadorian president and Bondi for their coordination in returning Alfredo Garcia to U.S. soil. Alfredo Garcia appeared before a federal court in Nashville on June the 6th, where he was formally indicted. His arraignment has been scheduled for June the 13th. Until then, he will remain in federal custody. The Trump administration has accused him of being affiliated with the MS-13 gang, an allegation his defense team strongly denies. His attorney, Simon Sandoval Mischonberg, described the government's actions as an abuse of power and a violation of due process. Let's take a look at what he said.
What happened today is an abuse of power. What happened today is the exact opposite of due process, because due process means the opportunity to defend yourself before you're punished, not afterwards. Mr. Abrego Garcia is going to be vigorously defending the charges against him. I am planning to meet with him as soon as possible. I think what this really goes to show is that this administration, instead of simply admitting a mistake and apologizing, this matter could have gone away within a week or two after the case being filed. Instead of simply admitting their mistake, they'll stop at nothing at all, even some of the most preposterous charges imaginable, just to avoid admitting.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump defended the decision to rearrest Alfredo Garcia. Trump stated that the public needed to see how horrible the man was and asserted that this case was about a dangerous individual. Here is what the U.S. president said.
DOJ made a decision. I think the decisions have been very, very good. And maybe they just said, look, all of these people, these judges that want to try and run the country, the judges are trying to, a local judge trying to run the country. The man has a horrible past. And I could see a decision being made. Bring him back, show everybody how horrible this guy is. And frankly, we have to do something because the judges are trying to take the place of a president that won in a landslide. And that's not supposed to be the way it is. And for the Democrats who have backed him, this was not the man from Maryland, this wonderful father from Maryland. This is a pretty...
Meanwhile, in a separate but related development, tensions flared in downtown Los Angeles as protests broke out following a series of federal immigration raids across the city. Video footage from the area showed police in full riot gear blocking streets and ordering demonstrators to disperse. Some protesters reportedly threw pieces of concrete at officers, prompting a response that included tear gas, pepper spray and flashbang grenades. We're once again joined by Raymond Vickery, who was a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce located in the U.S. Capitol. Thank you very much, Raymond. I want to first concentrate on this case of Alfredo Garcia for a second. What have you thought about how the Trump administration has handled this case? This has been ongoing for 3 months now, a big fight with the U.S. judiciary, with some cases of Donald Trump disregarding the choice of the judicial branch, including an order from the Supreme Court, which he has finally facilitated, but an arrest as soon as this man comes back to the United States. What are your thoughts on how the Trump administration has dealt with this situation?
Well, thanks again, Thomas, for having me. You're quite right. This is not a question, really, of a legitimate approach and difference in opinion between President Trump and the judiciary. What's going on here, and your clip from President Trump showed it explicitly, is a fight between President Trump and the judiciary. It's really a fight against the United States constitutional system, in which we have a system of checks and balances, an independent judiciary, which checks the executive as well as the legislative branches in the United States. In the situation here with Mr. Garcia, the Trump administration clearly acted outside the law. They admitted that it was a mistake. There was a Supreme Court decision saying that you must facilitate the return, and then the president and his supporters, the Attorney General Bondi, the State Department, the Secretary of State Rubio, are falling in line to try to be able to defeat what the court wants to have done. The whole question of whether or not the man has broken the law really has been used as a smokescreen. First of all,
Raymond, I'm really sorry. We just have limited time. I'm just going to interrupt and ask you another question. The American people, Trump cited it in the soundbite that we played there, that the American people voted for him on the popular vote this time. Donald Trump campaigned on having the biggest deportation scheme in history of the United States. Is this what the American people want?
I don't think so. I think that there was a scare tactic, that criminals were coming across the border and that life and limb were in danger, that was created. What has not been voted for by the American people is the disregard of the rule of law, to do away with the court's due process in order to be able to deport millions and millions of people. There was a trend, among Latin voters actually moving toward Trump. I predict that this kind of approach, what you've said has happened in California, is going to redound against the Trump administration in the midterms, and that's going to be the salvation, if you will, of moving the United States back to the respect for the rule of law and human rights.
Raymond Vickery, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. We now have some recent news coming in from Europe. The war of words between Russia and Ukraine is deepening over a delayed prisoner exchange in the repatriation of war dead. Russia claims it provided Ukraine with a list of 640 names focusing on the wounded, the seriously ill and the soldiers under 25, and accuses Kyiv of postponing the exchange indefinitely. Moscow also announced a large-scale humanitarian operation to return the bodies of more than 6,000 fallen Ukrainian soldiers. But Kyiv is pushing back. On Saturday, Ukraine's coordination headquarters denied Russia's accusations, saying no date has yet been set, and claimed that Moscow is not following through on agreed terms. Ukrainian officials accused Russia of dirty games and, quote, manipulations, adding that Moscow is using the issue for political theatre instead of humanitarian purposes. We're now joined by Andrew Latham, who's a professor of international relations at Manchester College and senior fellow. He's located in St. Paul, Minnesota. Thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us on the programme. This is the second prisoner exchange of these direct talks between Russia and Ukraine that was arranged in Istanbul. Andrew, this doesn't look very good for a peace deal, does it?
No, there's no peace deal happening here. There's on the margins, there's going to be some prisoner swaps, and apparently that's not going to even happen. But fundamentally, basically, the Russians, Vladimir Putin, there's no incentive structure for any kind of ceasefire. He's winning the war. And the longer he can delay and put things off, the better it is for him and for Russia in terms of their national interests. I'm not an apologist for Putin or for Russia, but I am looking at this from a 30,000-foot perspective. And I see what's going on, and I see who's winning the war. It's Russia. And the Ukrainians are just not in a position to even. I mean, I'm sure that Volodymyr Zelensky would love to have a ceasefire, but he's not going to get one because he's on the losing end of a military dynamic.
Andrew,
And yep.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So Putin has sent delegations to these direct talks in Istanbul and has now said that he seems to be advocating for this prisoner swap to go ahead. Kiev has said that this isn't true. Do you think that the fact that Putin is attending these talks is sort of to appease Donald Trump, and he's not serious about even a temporary ceasefire, let alone a prolonged one?
Vladimir Putin is not interested in a temporary ceasefire or a long-term peace agreement at the moment. On the margins, they're going to be talking about prisoner swaps and things like that, and that's wonderful, that's great. But as I said earlier, fundamentally, bottom line, the Russians are winning the war incrementally, step by step, and therefore have no incentive. There's no incentive structure that would lead them to agree to a ceasefire. Putin is going to fight this war until he gets the 4 oblasts that he wants, until he gets a demilitarized, neutralized Ukraine. He's not going to stop. And I mean, I don't know what more to say about that. It's just not going to happen. There's not going to be a ceasefire, and there's certainly not going to be a peace agreement, a durable peace agreement, until he is finished his campaign to accomplish what he perceives to be Russia's national interests. It's just not going to happen.
Andrew Latham, thank you very much for joining us and for your insight on the programme. Well, that is all we have time for, and we will continue to bring you any more news updates from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.